Arrasaleón, buenas tardes.
Good afternoon and welcome to the press conference of the film The Winter in the official section in the 64th edition of the San Sebastian Film Festival. And to talk about this film we have with us the director Emiliano Torres, actors Alejandro Seviekin and Christian Salguero, and producers Alejandro Israel, Ezequiel Borovinsky, and Rafael Verdugo. Before and to break the ice, shall we say, I would like Emiliano to explain where a film like The Winter starts up and how does the project start? Well, 10 years ago, working a documentary in the Patagonia, close to Route 40, I was trapped in in a snowstorm. I had to stop, and I found the foreman. I met the foreman, very similar to to the character in my film. I waited for the storm to go to pass, and at that moments of times and of waiting and silence, only talking about the horses, the climate, and mate, and dogs, and horses, I took the first mental notes of what the film was to be later. I left there without knowing too much about this man. The people from Patagonia are quite reluctant to talk about themselves, about their feelings, their emotions, and their stories. So therefore, what I did when I went back home was to write the part of the story that was missing. And that added to the reality, of the sad reality and the difficult reality of the rural workers in Argentina, and I suspect anywhere else throughout the world, was the seed that gave shape to the story. Thank you. Questions? Yes. There's a question in the second row. Hi. I would like to know how difficult was associating to shoot so many scenes with animals.
Con animales, que me imagino que habrá tenido sus complicaciones asociadas.
Sí, por supuesto.
Yes, shooting with animals. It was difficult to explain so many limitations and inconveniences and everything that to film with animals in that context and where we were. It was difficult, especially when one avoids cruelty towards animals. This means that you have to wait, be patient, and to use the same old film tricks or cinema tricks, and to try to achieve what we're seeking. In the particular case of the sheep, we had to adapt to the real sheep shearing times. They don't wait for cinema, and they aren't called to on set when one wants. So therefore, we had to change our plans almost on a daily basis to adapt the script in other cases. But I think that all of those limitations, all of those inconveniences and setbacks allowed us to adapt ourselves to the context, to the landscape, and not take film to that place, but to see how that place allowed us to tell a story at the end of the day. Any further questions? Yes, here in the front row. The microphone will arrive in a moment. I like the film. I think that the cast is perfect. The actor's surprise of Alejandro Seviekin in this film was sublime, knowing who you're dealing with. A great joy to see him on screen. And how long did you take to film due to the season? Just due to the season that you shot it in. Well, okay, so The Winter has a lot of it's a small film with a lot of production problems. We had to divide it into two stages, 2 weeks in winter, and then to stop the shoot for 4 months, to wait, he corrects himself, waiting for summer. So therefore, we undertook the risk of dividing a feature film to what usually, and which is not recommendable to do, and it's usually not done this way. And we undertook this risk, which at the end of the day was worthwhile because we wanted to capture that landscape at different times. We filmed 2 weeks in winter and 4 weeks in summer. The character of a woman in Patagonia, is it a secondary? Yes, it's a male universe, really. The truth is schools, hospitals, or any possibility of building a home in the rural world in Patagonia makes it difficult to set up and create a family, and therefore the owners, landowners, just like in the film, they prefer solitary and foreman without a family. Therefore, so that doesn't involve further complications with women and children. This changes those places in enormous territories at the charge of solitary and very hostile in some cases and very hard-headed characters. Yes. Okay. The praise has been given to the actors, but I would like to know, how did you do the casting? How did you do to achieve actors that are not very well known in Argentina, despite that they're well known for their work, but the influence that the producers, Boromiki, as well as Israel, within the film, how could you explain that? Well, I worked with complete freedom in the casting for the film, the plot, and as it was my first feature film, it gave me that freedom. So therefore, we coincided in every case that what we would seek were the right actors for this film, and not necessarily stars or big stars. So we were initially tried to find actors in Buenos Aires. My experience as an assistant director has allowed me to have met most of the Argentinian actors, but I saw that I had to move from Buenos Aires, and we did a regional casting in Corrientes, Misiones, and Paraguay, and that's where I met Mr. Christian Salguero one morning in Posadas. It was a very warm morning, and it was a revelation for me. Christian Salguero, his looks and the way he performed was absolutely cinematographic. The other great intuition for the film was to fly to Santiago de Chile and interview a few actors in Santiago in a short period of time, in a couple of days. The last person I met was Alejandro Sieveking, and when he entered the bar and I shook his hand, I realized that I had found the leading actor for the film. Alejandro, as you know, probably one of the most important drama actors in Chile, and also a playwright, and a great actor, as I've said. And despite his experience and his history in Chilean theater and plays, he got involved in working into a very realistic and cinematographic register with very humble and with enormous commitment. Perhaps it'd be interesting that the actors could perhaps explain, Christian and Alejandro, what was the experience of being together working in the film, because the film is sustained thanks to their work. They are the backbone of the film. What were your relative experiences working in the film? I think that one works in cinema because it's fascinating. But the real fascination is when one reads a good script. And the winter, El Invierno, had a very good script, and so therefore it wasn't difficult. There were a lot of difficulties on a practical level. The truth is, I had to say no at the beginning. I said, what have I got to do, this, that, and the other? And then I was isolated completely with my link with the production. I lost my computer, or my computer didn't work, and I had to call them up and say immediately yes, without thinking of it for a second, that of course I would love to do the film. And the experience in itself, in practice, was fantastic. What I mean by this is that I've always believed, and I repeat this, and I repeat myself in this, but it is true that I think that cinema is a director's art, that we actors, we've got to try to manage. And what we were talking about, for example, animals are more spontaneous. And you say, well, that dog should do a lot of things, but the truth is one has to try to achieve that simplicity and calm, and in that sense, each film for a person like me is like going to school. One never in cinema manages to, because cinema is changing and films are changing over time. So therefore, when one never can say I arrived and I hit the ceiling, no, and I made the best, because one is always in a changing world. And the idea is to improve as much every time you perform or portray a character to the best of your possibilities. Christian? I met a lot of very nice people, just like the animals. They were very nice as well. I like the animals, very tough as well. But it was an experience which was a great experience. I enjoyed it very much. A beautiful experience. Yes, we've got a question here, and then, yes, and we'll give you, yes. Second row first, and then that one there. Hi again. I would like to ask the actors, what's it like to work in a film and where there's very little dialogue? What are you saying? Little dialogue? Yes, there's a lot of silences. That must be very tiring for an actor. Yes, the dialogue is always the most difficult thing to do. Why? Because one's got to think. What I mean, it's not always done because there are technical demands that one has to bear in mind, and all of a sudden one has to repeat the dialogue until it's, and it's not something that you learn off by heart. That is to say, it depends upon the director. One does it, if one does it slightly bad, in that case, and you know, you've got to excuse us because sometimes we don't get it right. Christian, I don't know whether you've got something to say to that. For me, that was all very good because it was like working and talking with your emotions. As we couldn't talk, we didn't have a lot of dialogue. We had to transmit and convey with our emotions, and that's the idea. That's what it's all about. Is it possible that in the future, the place where you shot the film will turn into a tourist, or will be in the hand of multinationals, or will turn into a tourist zoo? No, that's possible because Patagonia is a territory which is it's constantly under change and changing, albeit it seems immobile and that nothing has changed. But the change of owners of these landowners is constant. Climate change, on the other hand, has obliged the owners, the landowners, to change their commercial strategies. Yes, there are many places in Patagonia that are linked, that are driven towards tourism and have left to one side the historical work, the historical profitability of these types of establishments, leaving to one side a lot of people at the same time, history, culture, and so on and so forth. It's difficult to judge the situation in Patagonia because each piece of land and ranch is a world on its own. It's difficult to generalize, and there are places where things are working very well, and the others that are making it just right. But there are other places where it seems that time hasn't gone by, and they live and they work like they did 100 years ago. Yes, we have another question here. Given that the film is called The Winter, I have a question about the editing, quite precisely the moment in which Jada is on his own working. You cut to the summer, and he's walking on his own. You cut to the summer. Could you talk about the intention behind this, of that moment in the film when you cut to the summer? Yes, it's a cut that I particularly like. It's very violent. I needed to mark the change of cycle, change of season, because of the narrative, narratively, but I abandons the character at the moment where his life is is at risk. We don't know what's going to happen to him. And the next shot is very silent at the beginning with the truck, and as we saw in the first images in the first 5 minutes of the film. And as of there is where the cycle starts again, and where we start to see that this film is about the description of a character at the end of the day with two faces, or two sides of a single coin, of the same coin. It's a moment it's a cut moment. I wanted to cut it brutally at that moment, just at that moment as well. Any further questions? Over there, yeah. I'd like to talk about another aspect of the film, because I think there are two actors, but there's a third character, which is the landscape. I think everything in the film is also explained and is closely linked to the landscape. You worked with a splendid DOP, which is Ramiro Cevita. How did you address how to film with Ramiro, my DOP? We've been working for that. We've known each other for 25 years, we're very good friends, and I think we share a vision of filmmaking which is quite similar. We decided to confront it with a documentary spirit, with it almost pictoric rigor. We knew that we would have to describe the light of this film every day and in every scene and every shot. Basically, our strategy was defined in filming for light. We looked at specific moments where we were waiting when we had to wait, and we shot quickly when we had to. More than lights, we filmed it with compasses and with a watch. This goes back to shooting classic type films, which are shot on location. And I thought it was the only way to undertake the commitment of shooting in these places, which are so inhospitable, so far away, and great difficulties for access. So, to a certain extent, we had to adapt ourselves to the landscape to survive, just like the characters do, and to adapt the aesthetics of the film to whatever was possible. So, therefore, I think in a majority of the cases, these limitations helped us, and the wind, the snow, the cold, and the distance at the end of the day guided us to how we had to shoot the film. I've talked to several people who have seen the film, and they find in it resonances of Western. I'm not sure whether this is intended, this was your intention, or it came out this way. Many people think, well, especially the way the Westerns, and especially the way they treated the landscape. Yeah, it's an inevitable reference. It's a genre which is a significant genre that I know very well and I'm very interested in. To see a guy riding a horse with a rifle in an enormous landscape, far away from the law and from the presence of the state, regulating the relationships between people, it's inevitable to think about a Western. But in any case, what I wanted to do was maintain the control upon that Western side of things and focus upon the characters, and in a realist type of story. And when there was any reference to this, I wanted to be a bit dirtier, shall we say, in the way I carried out the narrative from a visual standpoint above all, and not to have any stylist or formal or genre perspective, but allow me to allow the characters to take me, and especially everything as regards to the action that was carried out throughout the film. Any further questions? If there aren't further questions, I'll continue. Yes, because there's an aspect that I'm interested in, and that is for you to talk about. And here, I'm interested in the producers of the film to tell us something. The Winter, El Invierno, is a film that has a long work in laboratories and different festivals, awards. It was in Toulouse. It won Films in Progress. So could you explain the entire process of getting the film onto its feet? The script was written a couple of times. I'm not too sure whether the producers would like to contribute their point of view there. That would be very interesting. Well, yes. The development process was very fruitful, fortunately, but it was quite long. The film, at the end of the day, it won Films in Progress in Toulouse this year, but it also received various recognitions through its development stage in different places, in Cartagena, Guadalajara, It won an award to the best script of the Scriptwriters Association in Argentina, which is called Argentores, and several others. And therefore, the film, obviously, like in every film in Argentina, or most of the films in Argentina, are due to the support of the INCA, the National Institute for Cinema, and in this case we had something which can't be valued, which is the co-production with France, with Raphael, which was very natural. It flowed very well. Even from our own point of view, we understood that it was going to that what the film was going to be like. It's the same film. That doesn't happen every time in co-production. It was an excellent experience, and that's how a bit here, a bit there, and a bit from there. That's where the resources were achieved to make the film in a way which was quite particular that Emiliano explained, which is not usual to shoot a film in two parts, and this brought about its certain particularities, but that's how the design of the production of the film was made. I don't know whether anybody wants to add anything else. Can I speak in French or in English? Yes, you can speak in French if you're more comfortable. Well, better in French. My name is Raphael Berdureau, and I would like to explain what occurred to me with this film. This film for me was a miracle. It was an extraordinary off by chance thing. I visited Patagonia, and after 2 months, as a coincidence, I received an email from the producer who sit on the other end of the table, who said, well, how about this script? And in Patagonia, something surprised me enormously, and that is to say that nature is alive. It's as if it had a voice of its own. It's as if the landscape spoke to you. In Patagonia, there's always a wind blowing with a different intensity that is sculpting the landscape. We see the sky and the clouds, and we have the impression that even if it's empty, it seems as if it's inhabited. We could say this is an excellent background with which to shoot a film. And then, by coincidence, 2 months later, I received the script. So therefore, everything was done quite naturally. And what I liked very much about the script was that it wasn't a classic Western script with the good guy and the bad guy. In this script, both characters, neither they are good or bad, they're just human. Both of them have to confront to their survival and their existence in that natural landscape. And the gesture of the young man when he's going to bury the old man, it's a gesture of dignity and respect that moved me very much in the script already. So therefore, all of this humanity, which is conserved vis-a-vis that enormous silence and landscape and that nature, which is overwhelming, I thought that was quite original in the film. I thought it was very original, and that's what I wanted to say. So therefore, and bravo to the crew, because I was there. I went there in summer. I'm not that courageous. I didn't go there in winter, but in summer, the temperature between night and day, there's a difference of 30 degrees. I'd never been so cold in the night, and they continued to shoot until 3 or 4 or 5 a.m. It's a small crew, but always highly concentrated, because they constantly had to adapt themselves to the weather conditions, or you can go from good weather to snow to rain just in a space of a couple of hours. So therefore, it was quite stressful for the producers, but also for the director and the actors. We've got time for one last question if anyone wants to ask it. No? Well, and in order to finish, Emiliano, could you summarize quite briefly? I think that the film, obviously the story is a relationship with these two characters in that inhospitable, tough landscape, but it's the relationship with work. That is to say, to what extent the obsession for keeping a job can condition how we act or our lives. Yes, I think it's a story or a film in which, beyond describing the precarious situation of the rural workers, the story questions the struggle to survive and to maintain your job, and what we leave along the way as well, and what is the price that we're prepared to pay for that competition to achieve and maintain your job. And I suspect that this idea could be extrapolated to any activity and any situation. That's how much do we leave along the way into fight and to be the foreman of our own of our lives at present, for example, and with the immigration problems and working and labor problems that we know in the film is a sad reflection of the present day. Thank you very much for having come for the film, and I hope you have a lot of luck in its trajectory, and congratulations. Thank you.
Switch it off.